Uh, Same outfit as last video. That's because, as I said before, I'm trying to make videos daily, but now because of that, I'm hoping to also make multiple videos in a day, because there'll be days I won't be able to make videos at all, and I don't want to be a case where I'm talking really fast. I don't want it to be a case where I miss a day because I foolishly thought I could do something and then I couldn't. So, hi! Talking more about fandoms and, just things that I'm interested in that have, affected, that have helped shape me currently to who I am today. I'm staring right at it and I can't even pronounce it in my mouth right now. Webcomics. I'm going to be talking about webcomics. I know I mentioned in the last video that I'm going to be talking about fanfiction. That's going to be the next video. This one, but I feel like this one's more important to talk about. I'm gonna make both videos. I felt like doing this one first, so I'm gonna do this one first. So, my gosh, I'm realizing. I'm gonna tell you in a little secret that happened last time. It was not yesterday, but a couple days before. I was desperately trying to make a video. No, it actually was yesterday. I don't know my days, but yesterday I was trying to make multiple videos. I was only able to make one, and I was actually trying to make this very one, and maybe that's why I'm hoping that maybe I could make multiple videos today, whereas yesterday I wasn't able to. Stuff happened, so I wasn't able to do so. But this was my second video. I'm like, alright, I got this. I'm going to do it. This is going to be great. And then it took 5 tries, and even after that 5th try, something dramatic happened within the family, so I just had to drop everything and go, and then I couldn't get back to here. So, that... I don't know who wanted to hear that, but I felt like sharing it, and that's the whole point of why I'm making this, is to share stuff and to enjoy myself. So webcomics. I got into anime, which backpedaling. I was planning on doing the webtoons before I was going to make a video about anime. But then I also said in that video multiple times, each time I was trying to make it, how I watch anime first, so it should have made more sense to make the anime episode first. Whoops! Anyways, a little red because of the tint of my shield, but also it's hot in this car. So, I could snap, but I can also double snap. It's fun. Anyway, webtoons, particularly webcomics, particularly webtoons. I got introduced into anime, found anime, and fell in love through friends, and then these very same friends also introduced me to particularly webtoons. It's a time I think I was so excited to talk about this one, and more so than the anime, was because I learned about electronic webtoons, and so I felt like I could talk also from the business side of things, because I'm excited and want to get into the business, so I want to learn about the business so I actually could step in knowing what to do. But during this time in my life, that wasn't the case. I just got introduced to webtoons, got introduced to comics in general through webtoons, and just basically got explained to me of how anime was once manga, but then this is also like the electronic version of manga. And I was like, all right, I'm down. And got hooked into webtoons that way. And uh found a lot of stuff, and I probably could, like, if I made a video talking about every single show or series or comics that I found, this probably would be 5 hours long, and my phone doesn't have the capabilities to do that. First off, and second off, you might get bored of me and leave, which would be understandable. I don't want that to happen. So I'm doing neither of those. I'm gonna put it into technically like 3 arcs. There's the arc of my teenager years, like mid-teenager years when I found this. And then my early adult years, and then more now. In each like arc, I guess, in a sense. It's not a case of I drop all of the first arc and I start on the second arc. So like it's a case of some of them get dropped and then I keep some of them, and as I go into the second arc, and so on and so forth. So the first in my teenager years was Thriller, because I absolutely love Thriller. I love big actions. I love action. I love suspense. I love a good drama. And thrillers to me feel like a sense of good drama, and that basically I was able to get that pretty quickly because a lot of people that create comics love creating thriller based material. And I got to see like good perspective art and good anatomy, and I also was drawing before I got into this, and as well as writing, but now I like this kind of amplified it more. Anime amplified me writing fan fiction. Webcomics amplified me like creating comics all together. And I absolutely loved it. I created a fanfic comic of a particular series, which then I dropped, and I'm hoping maybe one day to share it with you guys. But uh, that's gonna be for like way in the future. Um, so the first one was Thriller, and then the next section was Wholesome. Basically, life was starting to suck, and I couldn't handle it, and so I read Wholesome comics to help me get through. Because it was always a case of people in the future that were having good adult lives, and I was like, okay, maybe I could have this one day. That's kind of the gist that I was getting as I was reading stuff like that, and it was good. I feel like for a good chunk of all that, that's the stuff I dropped, ironically enough. And then jumping back into Thriller again more recently, I put here horror thriller, but I'm gonna put it horror slash thriller, because there is obviously thriller in horror, but that's not the only thing. Like, I found more thriller stuff of action and drama and been excited about that, but also a huge stock up in horror, and I've seen a lot of horror stuff in my life, real life and fiction, but I was not really that big into it. But this stuff was like, as well as gore at times, with depending on the comic, a lot of it was psychological. Love it. Love psychological horror. Love people just trying to mess with your brain and trying to like pick apart at it, because not only are you trying to, as a reader, trying to pick apart the author's brain and the story and what's going on, but it also like it's like a good slap of reality in your face. Kind of like how Wholesome is supposed to help soothe, horror is supposed to help reflect. And I love that. I love being able to reflect now, and reflecting has helped me try to get more out of my shell and make this series, not series, this channel. So those are the big three arcs, and I still read, but not as much. I'm more into anime and watching shows than I am into making or watching comics. But I am making mostly because I'm making my own comics right now. So when I'm not watching a show, I'm drawing and writing. So, but as I bring myself together, as I put down on the list, parentheses, maybe I can, in parentheses. I see the art, I get excited, I draw my own comics, and at first, it very much felt like when you if I share it with you, it'll look very small, blocky, and like I'm trying to write instead of draw, but still have it in picture form. But it helped me think, hey, maybe I could do this myself, especially since I'll get to that in a moment. But there's also a ton of small content creators, and some of them were able to make it big. It basically was like, hey, maybe I could do this. But I have always been good at math in my childhood, and I also seen how just because one person was able to do this big thing doesn't mean you'll be able to repeat it again. So so I try so I started basically getting better at my craft so that I could create my stories into comics that I feel close to as well. I shared one of those comics already of the history of it with a little bit of perspective of what's this going to be, just a little bit, just a smidge. Terrified of copyright, don't want someone to steal my stuff. So I kind of dropped webtoons a little bit, but then I would get ads for other series, and they had it all behind a paywall, and I would get excited and with an ad watch it, found out it was behind a paywall, went, all right, not reading this anymore. I'm not gonna. There's webtoons which already has like a money setup that's smart in the sense of, oh, if you want to read ahead of some other people you can, but this will eventually be free. Those other ones were full on paywall, and I was not having it. Holding them so tight, my fingers are turning red. Anyway, holding the phone tight. This is out of webtoon. Yay. Okay. I because I wanted to get into this, and I didn't want to end up like I didn't want to get into it with an empty hand, I guess, of empty knowledge of what's really going on. Especially when the first thing that ticked me off before I even got into the business side of it and thought, hey, maybe I can. I noticed that Patreon, one of the big companies, okay, I'm going to backpedal a little bit. During the day and age of the internet, it was like wild west on the internet. And then there's these companies that are trying to make themselves like, essentially, as I'm going to put it, the Walmart of this brand, of like this particular thing. So there's Patreon, which is like the case of, hey, we're going to do all the hard work of making sure that people could single-handedly like follow you and support you individually instead of you pouring money into your own website and all that. But in turn, we get like a chunk of that. And that's Patreon to a T. But Webtoons was also a case of that, of just being a huge platform, trying to get his name up there, this was with multiple different companies. I'm singling these two out because they're important to what I'm about to explain. And I noticed that webtoons in the beginning had, to me, felt like a crappy system of just, oh, we are partnered with Patreon, so you could support the people that you want to support here. And I was like, that feels very, very cheap. I feel like there should be a way, since there's already were ads playing on it, to like put up like maybe like an ad and a pop-up, which then you could cancel after, like exit out of after a little bit, once you like jump into the series. Not every single chapter, but you get the gist, right? Of like, there should be some way to help pay them better or something. And then later on, they had the the coin system of, you could watch ahead. If you like, you could pay to watch ahead, but you could also not, and that'd be fine, and you just have to wait. That was a good business decision, but the Patreon thing irked me the wrong way, even when I wasn't fully into the business stuff. And then I started learning about the Wild Wild West of people just making their own websites and keeping them up, and just business stuff altogether in the entertainment industry. And I love learning about it. I would love to try to get to understand it better and get my knees into it, but also go independently for my own art. But I learned how Webtoons is a Korean company, and I learned how later on, once they became big enough, that they basically turned to the people within their like the big artist names within their country, and was like, "Oh, you already have these comics. We'll help endorse them so that you could get even more money." And then of course, free money. You already finished a product, and then you're gonna get more money on top of it. Of course, you're gonna take it up. So there is that whole spiel, and I guess as from the consumer side, it was great because now you suddenly had more content from the creator side that were in it from the beginning, or like had the dream of going into this platform. They got chop-sided and talked about how frustrated they were because these other companies that clearly were finished were now just taking up all of the attention, and now they couldn't have the same prospects. Yeah, basically stuff along those lines. Uh, okay. I put down on here on the list falling out of love section, and loving and waiting / the series ended and I still love it. And I'm not gonna pinpoint. You know what? Who cares? I'm gonna pinpoint. Falling Out of Love. There was the first comic I ever read on that platform called Trump. And it clearly was like a thing where it was in another language and it got translated and moved over. And I loved it in the beginning because it had that thriller, the thrill and excitement and magic, and political drama that made sense within that world and that world building, and just the concept of time was so different because there's like is like fantasy but more grim fantasy, and I absolutely fell in love with it until I dropped webtoons as a whole and found that they kept trying to make every single character a main character in a sense, and kept sidelining the main plot for other plots. Or like it was going to be important, but it kept taking too long. And that it's the thing I've noticed with webcomics, particularly on webtoons. And this isn't just for this is with multiple different creators. I'm not going to name point them, but it gets out of hand. It feels like they are not willing to complete the story because they know it's a good money bag situation, and or they just are so excited about this one particular thing because they got bored of the original story plot, and so they're jumping around in the story instead of just telling the story or making it so the plot points that they're jumping to will make sense and actually stick with the reader long enough, because the time frame is taking too long. People forget what's originally happening, and then like they just keep jumping around. I'm thinking about one particular comic as I was saying it, but it applies to multiple. And Lore Olympus is the one I'm also gonna name drop. It was a very cute concept of just taking modern day like features of these Greek gods and goddesses and trying to like make a modern day version of it. And that's I thought that was like gonna be it. I feel like they kept trying to drag out the story, and like there's a bit of like mommy issues in it as well as I'm reading it, and I had to drop it because it wasn't, weirdly enough, I was getting more into thriller instead of just a romance aspect, and I was losing interest, which usually for me is the opposite. I am not big on romance, love thriller, so to me it was bad storytelling because it had potential and then it kind of fell flat in my eyes. Particularly when the court thing happened. That's the part where the people that read it, uh, that's the part where I just fell out of admiration for the series and went, okay, no more. And then the ones I love and wait on, the one that finished that I absolutely love, that feels like a masterpiece, and it was clear that they had like an end line story, was My Deepest Secret. It had the romance, but it's a sense of a horror romance, which is I I don't know. I feel like I can't handle normal romance. It has to be like either demented or like has an added feature onto it for me to like it. But it had that at first, which caught me, and I read it in excitement, and then they added like the detective, and now there's a love triangle, and I was like, love triangle, but detective, heck yes. And it was able to end beautifully, and I I want my stories to end up like that. Like, as I was thinking maybe I was already working once the series ended, but as I watched it end beautifully, not in the way that people were expecting in the beginning or hoped, but just felt natural and organic, and like you could read it from the beginning and end and it still makes sense. And I loved that. Loved it so much. This like genius mind in prospects to telling a story. I wish I will be able to pull something like that off one day, but my current stories I'm working on are less so about messing with the mind and more so about telling a theme, I guess. So maybe one day. But then there's other series that I'm reading. I'm not gonna name drop, that I'm still reading and still love and will wait on it because the story isn't getting messed up. Even if some of it is getting dragged out, it still is actually making sense, so I'm okay with it. So, yeah, I I feel like I should also add, because I'm having big hopes of writing my own comics one day, that these are highly influential for me. I am drawing traditionally right now, but I do plan on going into digital stuff as well so that I can get good at both. Because I'm currently like pretty good in physical, pretty not in digital. So that's something I'm gonna work on, and I'm hoping to also show that with you and get better over time with you guys. But yeah, I this one's pretty close to me because I plan on going into this as like a career, but more so I want to do it and then I want to make something out of it. So yeah, I'll let you go. Like and subscribe if you like this video or you want to hear more from me. And bye. Let you go.